Welcome to the Digital Advantage by Binder, a show by marketers for marketers who want to create engaging content experiences to differentiate their brand from the competition. Let's jump right in.
Hello and welcome to the Digital Advantage. This is a show by marketers for marketers who want to create engaging content experiences to differentiate their brand from the competition. My name is Dónal O Mearáin. I'm from Binder and I'm your host. Today we're joined by a really interesting guest. Somebody who helps hundreds of thousands of marketers probably through his business and thousands of retailers and brands to do just that with their product content, deliver amazing content experiences. So I'm delighted to welcome Rob Gonzalez, CMO of Salsify. Rob, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me here.
Brilliant. Delighted to have you. So yeah, as always, if you're watching this and you have questions for me or Rob or the show in general, make sure to drop them below, add some comments as well. Rob, before we start, would you like to give our audience a little intro into Salsify, into yourself and your own background as well?
Yeah, my own background is I'm a big nerd. I was a computer science major in college and was a software engineer early in my career and came into marketing back basically from the product path. So I went engineering, product management, product marketing, and then performance marketing and sales and all that. So I come very much from an analytical background and not so much the creative background. And Salsify, myself and two other guys founded the company back in 2012. And the idea was to enable branded manufacturers to have better control of their presence on the digital shelf. So if you're like a Coca-Cola, the vast majority of your sales are not direct to consumer. They're through Kroger, through Walmart, through Target, through Amazon, and so on and so forth. And our thesis was that Coca-Cola should care dramatically about their organic search ranking and their conversion rate on a Walmart.com. They should care very much about optimizing their product detail pages and the search experience on Walmart, the same way that everyone online with a web presence optimizes their websites for Google. So we thought that search engine optimization, search engine marketing would be really important for any omni-channel brand. And we thought that you needed software to do it. With Google, you're really kind of optimizing for one search engine. But for retail, you're optimizing for hundreds of search engines all over the world for every single trading partner that you got. And we thought that that complexity of doing that would require software. And that's what we sought out to create, was a system to manage all your content, but then help you optimize each of those retail experiences. Right.
Okay. I mean, I think that's thinking about what it is Salsify solves for. It's one of those clear things where there's a very, very clear need and the tech solves for it. There's certain technologies I look at and I go, yeah, that might maybe solve something, but there's literally no other way to do this in the scale that you're sort of describing there, right? So obviously something that is an investment for all, those branded manufacturers, as you described. One of the terms, when I look at what Salsify is doing, occasionally that comes up is this notion of retail media. Somebody removed from it. Could you explain to me what you understand about it? Because I think it might pop up once or twice in our conversation today.
Retail media is the biggest story in advertising right now anywhere. If you look at the projected spend on retail media, it's going to eclipse TV spend in terms of total ad dollars relatively shortly. That's unbelievable, up from basically close to zero in 2015, 2016. Now, traditionally, retailers all had media organizations that they called trade marketing. And if you walk into like a grocery store, for example, and you look at the end caps, or you walk down the aisle and there's little tags that are promoting products that are off the shelf, those are called shelf talkers. Or sometimes if you look down at the floor, there'll be advertisements that are on the floor. There's floor talkers, and so on and so forth, right? All of those are paid promotional opportunities for brands to get their product more visibly in front of consumers that are walking through the physical store. Online has a very similar mechanism of getting products in front of consumers that you can pay for. And it's similar to, again, I know this is a podcast for marketers. So if you're used to looking at Google and you know that you can spend money on Google in order to get your paid search results, and the top, at this point, 4-5 search results on Google are all paid, Amazon, Walmart, Target, others have gone that same route. So if you search for tissue paper on Amazon, there are people that are bidding on the search phrase tissue paper, and their products will show up above the organic search results. And that's called a sponsored product listing. That's one type of retail media. There's others. There's branded retail media options that are kind of like banner ads. There's branded retail media options that are like branded landing pages. There's retail media options that are off-site displays. So if you're like an Amazon or a Walmart, you've got, just like the Google Display Network, you've got the display presences that are off the major Amazon.com or Walmart.com, where you can further spread the brand. Walmart just bought Vizio, so you're going to have branded media opportunities through the Vizio TV advertising. So retail media in broad strokes is all the digital advertising that a brand can do in the context of a retailer's website and digital experiences.
Right. Okay. So you've just clarified for me there. It's like a whole new world to me as an individual, right? Like I kind of understand the brands might go to market and try to reach their audiences this way, but the how you're able to just walk through some of those, describe that to me. And then also you leave me the sense that this is something that's still developing as well, right? Like, so we don't have our arms around the whole of it yet. Okay. Thank you very much for sort of framing that piece for me. It helps me, and I'm sure our audience as we go about this conversation. So then DAM and PIM, right? A great combo. Okay. I spoke with Scott Brinker. We've met with Scott a few times through some of our marketing, and he's described them as a super couple, right? I don't necessarily want to get into that just yet, but I think the interesting thing is like, why is that, right? And for me, it's how people the changing nature of how people have are engaging with brands, right? Part of that's the retail media piece that you've described previously, but I'd love to get your take on what are the major trends that you see and how people engage with brands. What are the changes in them?
To start with the technology piece, fundamentally, for any major type of data that you're managing as an organization, you benefit from having a place to store, manage, and organize work around that type of data. So a digital asset management system does that for digital assets, your images, videos, and so on and so forth. And they've got lots of capabilities that are specific to image management. A product information management system is analogous, but for product data, mostly focusing on attributes and data items, things like how heavy is it, how wide is it, how tall is it, how many fit in a case, how many cases are on a pallet, how heavy is the pallet, what are the temperature requirements for shipping and storaging, and then also the marketing stuff. What is the romance copy? What is the 500 character description for Walmart? What is the 250 character description for Meijer? What are the 10 feature bullets for your product category on Amazon? The character length and other character requirements for Amazon. What's the product title for Walmart? All that stuff too. And so the category that we've created, PXM, pulls all of the digital assets out of the digital asset management system and then is a PIM, but it builds on top of the PIM characteristics by enabling you then to connect it to Amazon, for example. So think of it as a system of record that also has connectivity to the market so that the information that you're curating can get out there. So that's the technology piece of it. And the way that it relates to marketers, I think, is kind of interesting. If you go back in time, if you go back to the olden days of 2012, 2010, the percentage of sales that were online for most products was pretty small. Amazon was not, in 2010, Amazon was not a top 10 retailer by gross sales in the United States, which is incredible for people to think about right now. They went from not even in the top 10 to number one in just an absolutely short period of time. And to be up there and punching against Walmart, which is just an absolutely incredible company, a juggernaut out there in such a short period of time is really impressive. And if you are, for example, someone like a Johnson & Johnson in the years 2010, your total gross sales online through any online channel is a very small percentage of your gross sales. And the way that the companies grew then to manage what images are shown on the product detail page of an Amazon, of a CVS, of a Walgreens, what are the descriptions that are posted, is the sales teams that were interacting with the retailers would fill in basically spreadsheets with a column for description, a column for feature bullet, and so on and so forth. Submit those to the retailers, and the retailers would upload those to the website. And so it kind of grew up in a very manual way, and organizationally it grew up in the sales organization. Now, at some point, especially, in a lot of categories, COVID really drove a lot of online adoption. Alcohol, for example, nobody was buying alcohol, or very few people were buying alcohol in 2019. You had Drizzly doing pretty well. Instacart had some, but generally speaking, it wasn't a category that had a lot of online penetration. in 2020, 2021, a lot of people bought alcohol online. And there's been a lot of growth in sales online. And at some point, the number of impressions that these product detail pages get are greater than the number of impressions that your brand gets on television, for example, or on your website. I mean, I had a conversation, I remember back in 2018, 2019, with a global president of a tool manufacturing company. And, he made the comment internally, he's having an argument with one of his teams about funding. And they had just spent literally millions of dollars on a Sitecore implementation for their .com. And he said, how many people go to our .com versus see our products every single day on Amazon? It's not even close, or a HomeDepot.com or Lowe's.com. The number of consumer impressions of the brand on these .coms is orders of magnitude greater than the website. And yet people are spending, millions of dollars on an Accenture Sitecore project for their home.com. And they're having a poor sales rep filling in a spreadsheet by hand for Amazon a lot of the time, right? It's completely disproportional to the value that they're getting. And so there's the growth in digital and other changes in the way that consumers experience brands means that these .coms have become great branding opportunities. They're where your brands get the most impressions anywhere. And yet, most companies, they're managing their retail.com presence out of sales organizations. The marketing teams have been lightly involved in the process.
But what then? I mean, if I think about that, like maybe if there, 10%, let's just be generous, say 10% of the views of the brand's product are this perfectly curated home.com website, and 90% is uncurated. Maybe it comes across perfectly as designed because somebody's done their job really well, but probably not, right? Like it's probably a little disjointed, a little inconsistent, a little irrelevant to the person that's searching at that time. What impact does that sort of shift in how people are consuming brands on those media channels have on the brands themselves?
I think it's like any type of marketing where the medium and the message have kind of an interesting interplay. The way that you do branding on Amazon.com and the way you do branding on, on a Super Bowl commercial, and the way that you do branding through Netflix advertising, you have to use different strategies because the engagement style is different across all those mediums. But they're all ways that you can build affinity for your brand and get core brand messages out. On Amazon, just as an example, people that universities have done studies of people who shop online, and you go to a product detail page, they look at where their eyes go, and they look at where the mouse goes. And one of the things that the majority of shoppers do is they might not read the description always, but they'll take the mouse and they'll mouse over all of the images that are in the image gallery. And so you think about, well, okay, I'm a brand. What is the point of the product detail page? The point of the product detail page on some level is to sell the product. You want people that get there to hit the buy button. But if millions of people are going to see this product detail page, it's also a fantastic opportunity to tell a story. And you've got this mechanism to tell the story of the image gallery. So you can kind of get cute with what goes in the image gallery. A bad branding strategy there is you show just pictures of the product. And this is the traditional way that people have loaded content onto e-commerce sites. It's like the front of the product, the front left shot of the product, the front right shot of the product, the top of the product, the back of the product, the bottom of the product, right? It's like the planogram image set just slapped onto a product detail page. Yeah. And that's not really compelling, right? So you can do other things. You can take an image and put just a lot of text on the image. So, if you're L'Oreal, and L'Oreal has made a big point of not doing any animal testing, that's a message that they can put front and center on product detail pages to reinforce this value of the company, right? So that's these branding opportunities of the image gallery are things that I think some great brands take advantage of and most people are underutilizing. There's also video. Like you don't want to put a 3-minute video. Some people are putting 3-4 minute videos on their product detail pages. That's fine if it's a product that requires instruction on how to use. And sometimes if you put instructions on how to use the product, it helps increase conversion rate and it helps reduce return rate. But a lot of other products, a 30-second spot where you're just doing a quick video to tell a brand story and engage consumers can really help a lot. So I think getting marketers engaged in thinking about these pages as kind of it's their full funnel. They drive top of funnel engagement. They drive middle of funnel engagement. They drive bottom of funnel conversion performance. That's the mindset shift that I think large omni-channel brands have to have in a world where a lot of their consumer impressions and touch points are on these product detail pages compared to in the past.
But are they not, like, this seems so paradoxical to me that you would, have marketers who, for the most part, are probably screaming out for more money to be spent on brand focused efforts. Certainly something that we come across, less on pure performance stuff. We need to build brand. This is the core that could help us sort of grow in the future. Certainly the companies that we work with, many of them feel this way. But then at the point of greatest impact, surely the product detail page for somebody showing the highest intent, there's like, these are my words now, there isn't a similar due care to providing that great branded experience right to that endpoint. Is that sort of what we're getting at here?
Yeah, I mean, I think due to the history of the way that media and branding has worked, a lot of folks like to think of branding as a separate activity on some basic level, right? So you'll think of TV advertising as branding because when you're watching the TV advertisement, you're leaving an impression and you're trying to build affinity for your brand and you're trying to drive a brand message, but you don't expect somebody to buy immediately, right? So there's other examples, though, historically before digital, where the branding team and the sales team align pretty tightly. And one major one is on packaging. So it's not like the branding team is not involved in the package design of the product because the package design of the product is core to the brand of the product. And the sales team and others, like the legal team, also care about the package design of the product because you've got to make sure that your claims and your ingredients are squared away. And you've got to make sure that any kind of call outs to drive conversion are on there. And so the package is an area where it serves multiple purposes. It's a branding opportunity, but it's also a conversion opportunity, and companies understand this. And so I think in the digital world, there are some impressions that by and large are closer to television in the sense that they're closer to just pure branding. And there's others that are kind of a mixed bag. They do serve a branding purpose and they serve a conversion purpose. And you've got to look at it using both lenses. Even like YouTube advertising, right? You can click on the thing and go to the page to buy the product, right? And you can't click on a television and go to the page to buy the product. So what is YouTube video? Is it pure branding? Maybe it's closer to pure branding, but it's a mix. And you can actually put a call to action there in a way that you can't really put a call to action on the TV. So I think the digital world, it mixes the marketing disciplines a lot more than a traditional world of branding and advertising. And I think when people that are trying to make the divisions of, pure performance marketing or pure brand marketing, I think that those distinctions reflect more traditional org charts than they do the new reality.
Yeah, really interesting. I mean, I think if they're, as described at the top, all these sort of multitude of changes are happening at once, both technological and the capacity of how we can meet our customers, right? So the touch points are changing. The variety of the content is changing, which is something that we see a huge amount, right? And the standards that are expected, right, of the audience as well. If all these things are changing, we must change with them as well. I guess, can I ask you something then? Because it seems very clear to me there's a real challenge or tension at the heart of this, which is that there's a shift of dollars being spent on these new advertising channels, right? But it seems to be a highly inefficient sort of thing. It's probably some sort of gold rush, or the horizons have been expanded for these companies massively. But there's some sort of missed opportunity as well in how they're putting their creative content and their product content to work. Maybe we could just hone in on that a little bit more. Where are these dollars going? Where could they be going, and what are some sort of practical steps or things that companies could be doing in order to get more value out of their operations?
I'll start with some kind of interesting data for folks that will ground the conversation as to some extent why it's happening so quickly, so across so many different retailers. And a lot of it just has to do with the growth of online purchasing that COVID accelerated. Some of it's retrenched, but in broad strokes, we're a lot further along now in terms of total digital sales compared to where we would have been at normal course and speed without COVID. A lot of retailers spent a lot on infrastructure and purchasing capabilities in that period, including buy online, pick up in store and whatnot. And so if you go online, just as a data point here, if you're buying groceries online in the United States today, the average margin for a grocer to fulfill that order is -4%, which means an order online that's buy online, pick up in store, they're losing money on that order. The way that they turn that from a loss to a profit is through retail media advertising. And that's kind of Instacart's story. Instacart was, famously burning a lot of cash in the low interest environment. They launched a retail media strategy, and now their financials look incredibly a lot better because they've got a huge percentage of online grocery sales in the United States. So they've got a great advertising and media platform for folks to go and advertise their brands. And so if you're a grocer, you're a CPG retailer, you're a hardlines retailer, you're really anybody that's supporting online. The online operations add cost to your business, and the way that you make up that cost is you sell advertising to your suppliers, the branded manufacturers. So that's kind of the high level urgency that's driving a lot of this change. The branded manufacturers, they've got tensions themselves because they already have an advertising budget and they've got their own margin requirements. They've got their own profitability forecast that they've given Wall Street, and so they can't just start spending more on advertising. They can't just add more cost to their balance sheet on this advertising. So those dollars have got to come from somewhere. And ideally, they'd like to be as efficient as possible. Now, historically, there's a few things that have happened here. This is just an absolute major seismic shift. Historically, a branded manufacturer would do advertising planning once a year, and they would prepay a lot of the advertising in order to get discounts, and that's called upfronts. So you're kind of locked into your advertising strategy to a large extent for a 12-month period. And then you do market mix models to see how it's going, and then you kind of adjust your allocations on an annual basis. More and more retailers, and Stratably has some amazing data on this in their reports. More and more branded manufacturers are moving to quarterly, and even about, I think 10% of them are doing monthly reallocations of ad spend right now because the media landscape is changing so rapidly. So they're still signing some upfronts for some of their major traditional channels, but increasingly they're withholding more and more dollars for dynamic allocation throughout the year. And they allocate dynamically basically by measuring ROAS, which is return on ad spend, and looking at the advertising channels that are available and what's going to be more efficient. So some channels, just depending on what category you're in, it might feel expensive to advertise within your category on Amazon. If you're in an extremely competitive category and you're competing against other brands that have very deep advertising pockets, maybe it just doesn't seem worth it to do the bidding war there. Maybe it's more efficient for you to spend money on, to move on balance more dollars over to Target's Roundel, for example, right? And so what they're doing is they're looking across all of the different channels that are available, and they're trying to find the most return for the next marginal dollar of ad spend, and they're trying to do that more and more in real time. So, you can imagine the complexity here.
Yeah.
And where the content experiences, to get back to the theme of your podcast, where the content experiences come to play is, let's say that I am a brand and I'm paying advertising dollars to drive traffic to a web page, which is the product detail page for selling my product on a retail.com site. Well, if I'm paying money to get traffic to go to that site, you kind of want the site to look awesome, right? It's like you don't want to pay for TV ad space and just put a crappy ad up there. That doesn't make any sense. You don't want to pay for display advertising online and put a crappy image. It doesn't make any sense. If you're going to pay money for ad presence, you want the ad to look really good, and you want the conversion rate to be high. So the brands want to take control. If they're going to increasingly spend money on these advertising channels because retailers are pushing them to, and retailers kind of need the money to help with their own margins, the brands want the ad spend to return. They want it to perform well. And that requires that the experience that the ad dollars are driving consumers to is of high quality and isn't just a conversion experience, but tells the brand story because it's advertising and enables consumers to buy with confidence. That's how all this stuff is connected. There's just a seismic shift. And then within companies, there's a real question as to who owns this. Like traditionally, a branded manufacturer splits about 50% of their ad dollars between brand advertising and trade advertising. Trade, again, is the shelf talkers and floor talkers and end caps and shelf placement and circulars and all that sort of stuff. With all this dynamic reallocation, it kind of becomes a seating chart question. Who owns the retail media? Is this a branded spend? Is this an unbranded spend? And so there's all these questions about allocation and spend ownership and alignment with company strategy. And most brands are still figuring that out. I don't know too many that feel like they're completely confident with how the org chart of the future is going to look like with this.
Right. Well, I was actually, as you're talking there, you're describing a real complexity and something actually a little chaotic, in sort of the major shifts and trends that are happening there. I was going to ask if you knew anybody who's doing this well, or what are some signs that somebody is doing this well, or what are the companies, companies that are like in the nascent stage of excelling in this, or the pioneers, let's say, what are they doing to conquer all of that?
I think there's a number of companies that are doing it well on a small number of channels. So, right. All the major brands have got Amazon dialed in, and whether they're in-housing it or whether they're working with a top-tier agency like a Flywheel, they're going to have that dialed in. But if you look at the complexity with all of the retail media channels that are opening up now, the brands are frankly reacting to that chaos, and they're getting it done by hook or by crook. But they all recognize that the way that they're operating today and the way that their retail partners are operating isn't exactly sustainable. And they've got to figure out a better path forward. Some of that's going to be technology. Some of, we're not a retail media technology company, but we support adjacent capabilities in terms of some of it's going to be improving content management on the retail sites so that the media spend is efficient. Some of it's going to be reorganizing how they actually interact with their retailers. I think that we're, in terms of the long tail of retail media outside of the major retail media of Amazon, Walmart, Target, Kroger, I think there's a lot of change and that brands are going through right now.
Sure. Well, I think, fundamentally on the product experience side of and where that overlaps the content experience side, again, I started the conversation. I said, more I think about this, more I'm like, yeah, absolutely. This is something that technology needs to solve. You've described it there beautifully, with where previously it was salespeople speaking with individual retailers and relying on sort of, that information's out of date probably when that salesperson walks out the door. You know what I mean? Like, or near enough, right? So, I think probably for me, I'd say something you're seeing is, help me out on this if I'm wrong at all, is companies that are, leading with technology to solve a strategy that already exists, right? But it's also shifting and changing. So it's technology doing that thing that's meant to be doing, which is solving a problem that exists, not a problem that doesn't exist, or something that isn't part of how you run your operations yet today. And then similarly, doing it well and selecting it for integration and orchestration, right? Like, so there's integration between solutions, but orchestration between sort of the end touch points as well, depending on what they are. Certainly for us, that depends on that can be, in the example of some companies that, for example, we have a hospitality company, Red Roof Inn, and they do this on they can push content to TVs in rooms and also the welcome iPads in the foyer, as well as to their website, right, from their DAM. That sort of orchestration for you. But I presume what you're seeing companies do well on the, whether navigating the retail media landscape, or more accurately, the PDP pages, is that sort of orchestration as well, would you say?
Yeah, I think that the orchestration across all the functions is the area that companies most struggle with. I think if they've got a specific task to accomplish, like we want to make sure that the content quality grade of on Amazon or on Walmart or what have you is higher, then with a very targeted project, they can find people to do the job and get the project done. What we see struggling is on an ongoing basis. My claim is that if you're looking at like a product detail page on Amazon or Walmart or Kroger or Home Depot or Macy's, that those product detail pages are branding opportunities and they're also sales conversion opportunities. And you kind of there's multiple owners in a way. And how do you coordinate across teams to make sure that the teams are all accountable to whatever they need to be accountable for those pages? That coordination and accountability, shared accountability across teams, I think is something that especially traditional larger branded manufacturers are still figuring out today. I mean, what you've seen is an evolution, for example, where they know that the responsibility crosses a lot of these traditional department silos, but they're not quite sure how to break down the silos. So they will create a digital center of excellence, and the digital center of excellence kind of oversees some of the cross-functional work and tries to create KPIs and best practices and whatnot for other folks to follow. But yeah, I think there aren't that many systems that are shared across all these departments. There, what's a system outside of your HR system that a marketer, a sales rep, a supply chain officer all log into on a Tuesday? There's that just kind of doesn't exist, right? It's like email, right? They all log into email. And so I think that there are opportunities to have better coordination across teams in support end goal, which is driving great shopper experiences, great branded experiences everywhere your brand and your products are seen online.
Presumably,
so I think that's going to be a big challenge for these folks in the next few years.
And presumably complicated as well by multi-region, multi-brand, multi-product complications as well, or not complications, but routes to market.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of these where every I don't think there's like one size fits all solution here. Every company has their own culture and their own organizing philosophy. Some companies, each brand is almost like its own company. Like they almost act like private equity holding companies, and each brand is a little independent. And other companies are divided geographically, where the U.S. team sells all the brands, and the EMEA team sells all the brands. And there's kind of every mix under the sun. So depending on the history of a company, how much is M&A, how much is organic, what their culture is, there's going to be different answers to how they solve for this on a go forward basis. But yeah, I completely agree with the statement that you made.
Sweet. So Rob, we're almost done here. Wouldn't be a marketing podcast in 2024 if we didn't ask you about sort of the role of AI in all of this, where you see it today, where you see it going. What stage are we at in what you're describing through today, that with the role that AI plays, and if it's nascent or it's developing, is there some sort of vision for it as well?
In the world that we play in, I mean, Steve Jobs famously said that the computer is the bicycle for the mind, right? The bicycle allows you to go fast and far, but it's still, you're still powering it. I think AI is kind of like that in the world that we play in. The technology behind Gen AI, whether it's the diffusion models or the large language models, they are good at giving you an answer that sounds like the correct answer, but they're not databases. They can't actually give you the correct answer. And if you're a brand, like a Coca-Cola, that's an iconic brand that you've spent over 100 years building brand equity, and one of the most recognized brands in any country, anywhere in the world, you're not going to take your hands off the wheel and let AI generate content for you and just assume that it's all going to be okay. You want to curate it on some level. So I think there's a ton of places where AI can play in the experience generation space and give more leverage to large brands, but brands are not going to take their hands off the wheel. I don't think they can afford to. They can't afford for a hallucination to damage what their company has been trying to build for 100 plus years. So AI can help you generate a first draft. They can help you edit a draft. They can do an editorial pass on reviews and legal claims and stuff like that, and flag as a first pass anywhere where there's errors. They can, for example, do OCR work to take data that's off of packages or off of other physical areas and then digitize it. They can create first pass images. They can take images and doctor them up. They can take an image of a product and add a lifestyle scene behind it. They can do all kinds of stuff that I think either speeds up time to market, increases quality of what you're bringing to market, or empowers employees to do more than they're already capable of doing. In the images, for example, if you take a product and you want to add a background lifestyle scene to it, that used to require somebody who was extremely skilled in Photoshop. Now you can have somebody kind of create a first draft of that, get it to where they think it's brand appropriate and correct, and then hand it off to somebody with Photoshop to touch up before it goes out there. And that's a completely different workflow that has more scalability implications. So in my view, it's going to play a role almost throughout the entire content lifecycle, from ideation to creation to editing to publishing to measurement. But it's not going to replace, in terms of like full automation, humans in any step of the way, anytime in the next few years. And so I think that it's going to give leverage to creative teams, but it's not I think some people have been afraid that, oh, is this coming for my job? In the world that we play in, at least, I don't think it's going to come for anybody's job. I think it's going to give more leverage and scale to a lot of people.
For sure. And how so? Certainly, what we're seeing is it's about removing those tedious tasks, right? Removing decision making. If fatigue is the, flat tire of that bicycle you mentioned earlier, well then decision fatigue can be removed, right? By using AI, or at least can be forestalled. I personally definitely see that there's some automation that's available. Automation, not AI, but there are some AI co-pilot sort of things that could be quite interesting that are being done today, some of which you mentioned, OCR, etc., right? But maybe the idea that there's some sort of agent that is going to make these decisions, for companies. Yeah. It's just everything we're seeing, and thank God we've had a sort of a cooling on some of the thoughts around that as well. So
yeah,
Rob,
yeah, totally.
Okay, so Rob, thanks so much for joining us today. It's actually been really pleasant to chat to you, learn from you about something of which I knew, very little, but it's clearly impacting me professionally and impacting me on a personal level as a consumer as well. So wonderful to get that sort of insights today from you. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Digital Advantage, brought to you by Binder, the leading digital asset management platform. Binder helps you conquer the chaos of growing content, touchpoints, and relationships. If you found this episode inspiring, you'll love our additional content on our social channels, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform.